Hi, my name is Crystal, and I want you to consider me as your friendly neighborhood school psychologist, behavior analyst, and educational advocate. Now, my full name is Crystal Calhoun. Today, I want to share with you a behavior modification technique that will help control problem behaviors in children. Well, it'll actually help get rid of problem behaviors in children. So if you are a parent or an educator or you deal with someone with ADHD, you don't want to miss this video. This video will definitely help you. Now, I want to tell you, first of all, this is a behavior technique that has been tried and true by me, yours truly. All right, I want to tell you my story. First, when I was in graduate school studying behavior modification techniques, I would try these techniques on my own children. At that time, I had a 2-year-old toddler and a newborn baby. So one of the problems that I was having with my 2-year-old son was that every time I picked him up from preschool, he would get in the car and he would instantly start to whine. And it drove me absolutely crazy. So I went to school and I talked to my teacher, my professor, about this behavior. And she suggested that I use a technique we call extinction. And what extinction is simply ignoring the problem behavior. You're not reinforcing the problem behavior or giving it the attention that it's craving. Okay? So naturally, my son was whining because he wanted attention. There's a new baby around. He's been away from mommy for a couple of hours at preschool, and he wants mommy's attention. But he's going about it all the wrong ways. So she told me, basically, you're just going to ignore the behavior, and it's going to go away. So don't give attention to that behavior. Don't reinforce it, because if you do, you're just going to make it worse. So went to pick him up the next day from preschool. He got in the car and he started whining. I ignored it. He started whining some more, and I ignored it. He got louder. Okay, I still ignored it. He got even louder. I ignored it, but I'm having a real hard time now. Now he starts screaming and yelling to get my attention. So, of course, I give in. I'm upset. I'm frustrated. I'm thinking, this is not working. This stuff is not working. I was just pissed off. So I go to school the next day and I tell my professor, that stuff doesn't work. It doesn't work, especially not on my kids. I don't know who told you that technique works, but all it did was make my son just get worse and start screaming louder and louder and, causing me to be even more frustrated. And she said, oh, I forgot to tell you about the extinction burst. And I'm like, what's that? So she said, basically, whenever you ignore a problem behavior, what happens is, that person not used to you ignoring that behavior. So the behavior escalates. It gets worse. It increases in frequency or intensity. And in this case, that's what happened with my son. He just got louder and louder and louder till I finally gave in. And that is the absolute worst thing you could possibly do, because all you did basically is just reinforce that problem behavior, and you told that child basically that if you get louder, you scream louder and longer, I'm going to give in to you. You're going to get what you want. You're going to get the attention you want, whether it's negative or positive. You're going to get my attention. That's the worst thing that you can possibly do as a parent or as an educator, and especially as an educator. So I said, well, what can I do when this extinction burst thing happens? And she said, well, you want to use a technique that we call modeling. And modeling is when basically you want to find anyone in the general vicinity of where you're at. And when that child is engaging in that inappropriate behavior or that problem behavior, you want to find someone who's not engaging in that behavior. And I really don't care what they're doing, but as long as they're not doing that problem behavior, you want to acknowledge that person for not doing that problem behavior. Okay? So you want to look at that person and praise them and thank them and encourage them for not engaging in that problem behavior. Now, it's really easy to do when you're in the classroom. It was a little harder for me, but here we go. Here goes. This is what I did. I went and I picked my son up from school the next day, and he got in the car, and the first thing he did was start to whine, of course. So I looked over at my newborn baby, and he doesn't talk at all, but I decided to use him anyway. So I said, thank you so much, Jordan. Mommy loves when you don't whine or cry. That is such a good boy. You are doing so great. I really love when you don't whine or cry. So my 2-year-old son is sitting in the back seat. I'm looking at him through the rearview mirror, and he's going, I'm not whining. I'm not whining. you go. Voila, it worked. He wanted that same attention that I was giving the baby, but not whining. So here's what you teachers need to do in this classroom. If you have a child who's disruptive and they constantly make verbal outbursts without raising their hand, they yell out the answers to questions, they don't raise their hand, you don't want to give that child attention. You don't want to give them negative attention. You don't want to reprimand them. You don't want to roll your eyes at them or anything like that, okay? What you want to do is ignore that behavior. You want to look around the room and you want to find someone else who's raising their hand and waiting patiently for you to call upon them to answer that question. So what you're going to do is you're going to say, thank you so much, Sally. I like the way you raised your hand before asking your question. Good job. Now, what's your question, sweetheart? Now, thank you, Johnny. I love the way you're raising your hand before asking your question. Now, this kid right here who's the problem child, well, he's not the problem child. He's the child who is exhibiting some inappropriate behavior at that particular time. And he's going to look around the room and he's going to say, that's how I get attention, by raising my hand, So, now, what you have to do, this is very important, as a parent and as an educator, we have to now condition ourselves to acknowledge the positive behavior in these children every time you see it, especially if it's a child with ADHD. You want to find every opportunity that this child is not engaging in inappropriate behavior, whatever the case may be, whatever they're doing, but they're not doing the thing that bothers you or the problem behavior or the inappropriate behavior. You want to find every opportunity to acknowledge it, compliment them, praise them, and encourage them to increase that behavior, okay? So whenever you see that kid raising their hand before asking that question, say, thank you so much for raising your hand before asking your question. I like the way you're doing this. I want you to increase that behavior. Keep doing that. Keep up the good work. Okay, for instance, this kid with ADHD. This is a big thing for kids with ADHD. They're very impulsive. And it's not that they're bad. They just have a hard time controlling those impulsive behaviors. So they tend to blurt out the answer without raising their hand because they forget. They don't want to be disruptive. They don't want to make you angry. They don't want to get in trouble. But they forget because this is that weakness in them. This is a characteristic of ADHD. So now you're turning that whole negative situation around because these kids develop a low self-concept about themselves. They think of themselves as bad. They, they're always being degraded and reprimanded. They're being sent to the principal's office. They're getting detention. Phone calls are being made to mom, saying, your child is doing this, that, and the other. So there's all this negativity around this one child. Now, when you start to acknowledge that positive behavior every time you see it, what you're doing is you're increasing that child's self-esteem. You're teaching them what the appropriate behaviors are, and you're also, more importantly, you are changing who you are. You're changing how you respond to your children. Now you're looking for the positive in people, and that's a wonderful trait to have. So now when you see this particular child with ADHD who's sitting there and they're doing their work, normally they're distracted. They're talking to their their neighbor sitting next to them. But you see one little minute of them focusing and doing their work. I want you to acknowledge it and praise it and encourage it. I want you to go over there to that student and you say, thank you so much for doing your work and not being distracted, not talking to your neighbor. You're really doing a good job. Keep up the good work. You got to find every opportunity to praise that student and all your students in the classroom. That way you're not particularly just focusing on one person and they don't stand out like a sore thumb. So I want you to give me your comments, questions. Let me know how this technique works for you, okay? I want to hear from you, especially you parents and teachers and any of you out there who works with someone with ADHD. Let me know how it works for you. Hit me up on Twitter, Facebook, on my blog, my website, or on YouTube, and leave a comment. Let me know how things are going. Thanks so much for listening, and have a blessed and stress-free day.